Have you ever considered that how we're raising children is how we are raising our pets? Hey, it's Heather Chauvin, wife, mother of 3 boys, former social worker, breadwinner, recovering hustler, and stage 4 cancer survivor. I'm not a fan of that term, by the way. Beyond all of these titles and labels, I'm a human being, just like you, attempting to navigate it all while feeling good. My goal on this podcast is to show you that you can live an energized, sustainable life, both at home and in your work. It doesn't matter if you stay at home full-time, if you work from home, you're a CEO, a successful business owner, or trying to find some inspiration. On this show, I attempt to keep it real with stories, interviews, and random thoughts. This is not a business or career podcast, and it's not a parenting podcast. It's both and so much more. You will laugh. You may even cry, and you may even get a little frustrated with the truth you've been hiding from yourself. I believe all human behavior is a language, whether it's through your child's behavior, your health, or a relationship. And when we learn to listen instead of react, we begin to understand what it truly means to feel alive and in control. It's time to put your big girl pants on and find your brave. Let's go. Hey ladies, I am back, and today I have a very unconventional conversation with you. So I'm all about helping women thrive. What does that mean? That means you living in alignment with how you want to feel, how you live, work, play, and parent. And Mom is in Control, of course, is about women and motherhood and leaving that legacy that you desire, becoming empowered, feeling full, feeling powerful and energized and in alignment. But what we don't realize is that so often we are unconsciously creating our own challenges, unconsciously causing our own stress and disease. And too often when I talk to people, we think, I can't. You don't understand, Heather. My family or my children or my animals or this, but we're actually creating this reality for ourselves by the way that we think, by the actions that we take, by our lifestyle habits, and how we show up in the world. So today I'm really excited to share an interview that I did with my dear friend, Alina Sherman. She is the founder, owner of actually a local dog food company, raw dog food company in my hometown. And regardless of your beliefs around raw dog food, that is not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about Alina's passion and love for animals and helping animals thrive in their health. So because she does that, she has many, many conversations with pet owners, and a lot of those pet owners being women. And so during this conversation, Alina and I talk about kind of the social constructs of the female role and how society, I want to say projects onto us our expectations of who we need to be. And so I'm hoping that after today's conversation, you walk away with how we have been put in a box of who we need to be. And I want you to feel empowered to know that you can make your own decisions as well. So just a gentle reminder before we jump into today's episode with Alina, that we are now taking applications for mastery. So you can head on over to heatherchauvin.com/mastery and check that out. All right. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Please let me know your thoughts. Head on over to Instagram. You can find me at Heather Chauvin and let me know what you thought. Okay, Miss Alina.
Hi.
You're here.
I'm here.
You're here. So this is an interesting conversation for the Mom is in Control podcast. You are the owner of a raw pet food store, and we're going to be talking about being human, but also how this affects how we raise animals. which I think is really awesome because there's so many parallels between motherhood and pethood.
There is. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, pets are the new kids. And it's like, well, there's a difference, but really there's so much I see with the women that come into my stores that really do, show me that they're looking at things the same way as they would look at as if they were raising their kids. And it's really fascinating. I can't wait to talk to you about it.
Yeah. And I wanted to have this conversation because even when you and I were talking pre-recording, I'm just like, wow, I have those conversations with so many women all the time. And we don't realize like the social construct of how we are living is causing our own anxiety, expectations of others, environments, everything. And it literally is seeping into every area of our life. So why don't we start there? First of all, what lights you up about this conversation? Like, why are you so passionate about talking about the pink elephant in the room?
Because so many women come to me with so much anxiety and fear about every decision they make when it comes to their pets that it breaks my heart. If they only knew that they're one of the 25 or 30 women I talked to that day that had the same fears and the same insecurities about what's expected of them and how they treat their pet and how they dress their pet and how they groom their pet and how they walk their pet and definitely how they feed their pet. And I wish I could just tell them, like, look, you're not alone. Everybody has these questions. This is perfectly normal, and you need to trust your gut. And you need to do what you think is best for your pet. And that's the beauty of the family you bring into your household. And what you decide to do is that you get to be that decision maker. And it really doesn't matter if you have, your sister or your veterinarian or whoever it might be telling you that it has to be a certain way. It absolutely doesn't. And it's just fascinating to me how much of this I hear, and that it just infuriates me that it can't be a more open dialogue and conversation. It has to be so fiery.
Well, for a lot of people, like I have 3 children and currently one dog. Maybe I would have 10. I would have 10 dogs if I was allowed. I think that's why they have like dog laws, but I'm a pet lover. I'm a dog lover. And I grew up with animals, and I remember we grew up on like a little farm. We would actually bring the chickens in the house, me and my step siblings. So we would sit watching cartoons in the morning with like a rooster. We had a nice rooster curled up in a blanket sitting next to us on the couch until our parents found them. And then
that's amazing.
We would get in trouble. So, but it was just animals were like siblings to me. So I'm an only child, but every other weekend I had step siblings. So I became best friends with the animals. My point is, I didn't really realize until, we started talking how, our thoughts become our reality, because it's socially acceptable to say, I feel guilty for going after what I want because I have children and they're young. But when you take children out of the equation, and now women are still feeling guilty for, and not all women, of course, we're, stereotyping, right?
Yeah, I'm generalizing 100%.
We're generalizing. Yeah. Some are going to be like, I don't fucking care about my dog, right? Yeah. Like, and that's okay. Do you, just don't abuse your animals.
Yeah.
But realizing that our thoughts become our reality. It doesn't matter if we're caring for a child or we're caring for an animal or we have a partner. We're causing our, we're causing our own reality. So what's been your perspective on that?
I think that there's so much truth to what you're saying, and it's very much a matter of causing our own reality. I think when it comes to pets and kids, there's a lot of parallels. So similar to the decision to have a child. I mean, obviously sometimes that just happens, without much of a conscious decision. But the difference with pets is that we're usually generally making a very conscious decision to bring them into our home. We either, seek them at a shelter, look for a breeder, have someone say, I need to rehome my pet, whatever the case might be. And from that moment on, it feels like every decision that we're trying to make for them is somehow questioned or concerned, and it doesn't need to be. This idea of thinking of, okay, what am I supposed to feed my pet? On Instagram, I see A, B, and C. I go to a pet store and I see, these items on the shelf, and I need to form the best possible choice for my pet. And I think that's really similar to how we look at kids. Like, even if you look at whether or not, and I know this is a heated topic, but whether or not, to breastfeed your baby, right? It's such a heated debate. And there are women out there who say, okay, I physically can't, the circumstance didn't arise for allow me to do that. I've consciously made the choice not to because of whatever circumstance I'm in, or this is so paramount and of importance to me that I will sacrifice my own self-care and happiness in order to make sure that this is truly fulfilled at this level. And I think it's really similar with pet food specifically, but also just how we treat them and how we train them. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Have you seen that Fed is Best campaign?
Yes.
So I just had this conversation actually with the woman who's helping me write my book. And I forget what campaign I wanted to start, but I was like riffing on the Fed is Best because I think we've swung too much. And I notice people that I work with will get fixated on feeling like they have failed or something has gone wrong if they're not specifically like the perfectionist tendencies of what does your morning routine look like? Oh, well, I didn't do it this way. Okay, great. What works for you? Well, I don't know. It's like we're looking outside of ourselves too much for external validation. And it's like, how do you feel? Amazing? Then whatever you're doing is right. Keep going. So how do you, I know part of this conversation was around, or we wanted to talk about judgment.
Yeah.
And I think at the core of it, as women in general, there's a huge double standard, and you and your husband are business partners, but you were in the business before he was. You're about to pop with your second child.
Yeah.
Your business is booming, all the things. And I'm sure he doesn't get the same questions you do. So what do you notice about
Oh yeah, not
the
even
pressure
remotely.
that we put on ourselves?
I'm 8 months pregnant, so I'm literally going to pop really, really, really soon. And yeah, it's daily. I get a lot of questions and judgments, and they're just by the females I interact with. And let me put it to you this way: there's judgments we impose on ourselves, and there's judgments we allow others to impose on us. And, I brought up this whole...
Ooh, say that again.
There are judgments that we impose on ourselves, and then there are judgments we allow others to impose on us. And I say it that way specifically because you can have 150 people judge you standing naked on a stage, but if you do not let those judgments affect you, it is completely irrelevant how all of these people might feel about you or what you're doing. And this has been a really interesting pregnancy for me. When I was pregnant with my first child 3.5 years ago, my business was very much a part-time business. I had another day job. My life was structured a lot more conservatively, right? So I had a day job. I went on maternity leave. And after my child was born, I made a conscious choice to leave my career, focus on my business full time and grow it and take it to where I want to take it. And there wasn't as many judgments about those decisions. It wasn't like, oh, okay, so, what does this mean for how much time you get to spend with your child? And how are you going to break up your day? And how are you going to make sure you're concentrating on both? This pregnancy, it's very different. So now I'm in a much more established level of business. We have 2 locations and so on and so forth. I already have a 3.5-year-old at home, and I made a conscious choice to add another family member, or me and my husband did. Say, okay, you know what? No, we want to have another child. This is the right time for us. Let's do this. And the fact that I haven't devoted 100% of my energy and efforts during my pregnancy to this life growing inside of me, that I've prioritized my own physical and spiritual health, that I've prioritized my business and continued to make plans to drive it forward and take it to the next level, I think has caused a lot of people to feel uncomfortable and place judgments on me of, okay, well, she must be, she must not care about her pregnancy, or maybe she doesn't care about this other child that's coming along because I'm not, maybe not in the same headspace they are. And
Interesting.
wanting to take things to the next level and have those personal growth developments alongside with having another child, I think is really rocking some people's worlds in my life.
This is an interesting conversation because my brain goes to, it's like every child that you have, right? The epidemic of guilt. The first child, you have more time and space, like mentally, physically, to focus on the pregnancy, right? Or adoption process or whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
However, children come into your life. And then every child after that, it just evolves and changes. And you have more life experience and whatever. But I
Yeah.
noticed this with animals too. If you have an animal pre-family, post-family, the animal gets treated differently. And sometimes the side effect is guilt, not so much with the animals or them too, but the children, right? Like this chronic conversation of, I am not enough. I haven't spent enough time. I haven't spent enough energy. Oh my gosh, this is flying by because I just have to go, go, go. And I think it's an epidemic, whether it's fear or guilt. It doesn't serve us at all. And the judgments of like how you live your life. But you mentioned something, Alina, that I think is really, really important, which is your focus has changed this time about how am I going to create sustainability with my business, with my family, growing my family. You said I chose to focus more on my spiritual health, mental and physical health. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I knew going into 2019 that I felt deep, deep, deep down in every pore and every crevice of my body that if I didn't start taking care of myself in a way that was impactful and meaningful and long-term and life-changing, that there's no way that I was going to feel comfortable extending my business, extending my family life. And I felt like I was dying inside on a spiritual level. There's got to be women out there that must be able to relate to that. But I felt like I was dying inside. And I felt like if I didn't do something about this energy I was feeling, that it was going to start affecting me physically. And, it was just this really, really strong feeling of I have to do something about this. And then you walked into my life and I was captivated by the work you do. And I knew that I wanted to find a way to get to where I wanted to be. And I knew somehow that you were going to be a part of that. I could really feel it, but I was terrified. I was a little bit terrified of you.
I was going to add captivated and yet
terrified, but in a good way, because I know now that whenever I have a deep fear, that it's something I need to run towards. Mm-hmm. So I tippy-toed towards it last year to you, but eventually I did it. And I remember I wrote you a letter in April last year saying this has been a long time coming and this is how I feel. And this is what I want to do. And so I signed up for your mastery program, and it was the best thing I've done for myself in at least 10 or 15 years. Something I did for myself, not for other people, not to appease anyone, not to, do what other people think I should be doing with my life, but rather what I really needed in order to feel like I was doing what I wanted to do in life and feel alive and feel like I wasn't dying inside. And that was really huge for me. And I don't think I would have gotten to where I am today and having made those decisions of what I want to do and growing my family and growing my business without it.
I love this.
It's true. It's just, it's really, really, really deep down the truth. And, I could talk for hours and hours about what I've gone through working through your mastery program and working with you this year, and how, what I've learned, and how much of the work I had to do in order to, facilitate that growth. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that where my headspace would be today would have been very, very different. I think I would have allowed a lot of the judgments on me to rule and decide the decisions I make. And I wanted to, you mentioned, people talk about, you getting a pet. This is a little tangent here, but you get a pet before you have kids and all of this stuff. And pets are kind of like the starter kid. And, well, why don't you guys get a dog and see how things go? And if you can take care of that, then surely you can start a family. And it's kind of like their place in this natural progression, and how that's supposed to change after you've had a baby. And I've heard so many moms say to me, you're not gonna, or not say to me specifically, but I've heard so many moms express, you're not gonna love your pet anymore after you have a baby. You're gonna be like over it, and they're just gonna go sit in a corner, and whatever the case might be. I know for me that wasn't true. After I had my daughter, I was craving alone time with my pet. I was craving that bond, and that relationship that I had, worked so hard to develop. And I think that it's just exactly one of those things. It's this social construct. It's this idea that everyone keeps playing over and over that isn't necessarily true for everybody. And that if you express that that's not your story, then all of a sudden you're making people uncomfortable.
I love this. Okay. I want to backtrack a little bit. And you
Yeah.
just said something right now that was, if that's not your story, you kind of said, I don't know your exact words, but it was like, if that's not your story, it will make people uncomfortable. And I feel like you've given birth many times in the last 8 months. I'm like, oh, here comes another contraction. And I hear it a lot from women who, want to come into my world. And a lot of times their resistance, like they might use money, time, energy as the quote unquote excuse. And I say excuse, sometimes it's just you're not a good fit, or legit, it is not the right time, and it's stepping stones, right? So if I want to become Oprah's best friend or hang out in her circles, there's things I'm going to have to do in order to get there, right? Or if I want to run a marathon, I should probably get off the couch first. And the reason why I just made that statement is whatever you want, you just have to keep looking at it. And like you were saying, Alina, you knew deep down that change needed to happen. You were scared, but you just kept leaning into the fear until it was time for you. And oh yeah, what the statement I was going to make around that is I hear a lot of women saying, this feels indulgent to me, but yet, and I want to go into the self-care conversation about self-care is not selfish. But this feels indulgent to me, and this is for me. And I feel like that is a very selfish statement, very egotistical statement, because we all know what our life looks like when we are not honoring ourselves. And if I didn't honor myself, I would probably be in bed on a daily basis, no money, barely being able to attentive to our children. And I would probably be heavily medicated and not really being a productive member of society if I did what society wanted me to do. So it takes courage to be ourselves. And people might look at me now and go, Heather, you can't make that statement. And I can pretty much say, fuck you. That is a judgment that you're projecting onto me, assuming that you know what my inner landscape is like. And I believe as women, we are on a daily basis, whether it's, I know we started this conversation talking about our animals, but it could be animals, it could be parenting, it could be partnership, it could be business, career. We're literally swimming upstream on a daily basis, making little brave actions to say, this is not how I want to feel. And even though it is 2020, the mindsets and belief systems of a lot of cultural systems, including in other women, have yet not changed. And this is why I'm just such an advocate for communities of like-minded women to come together and to support each other, because that is what we're supposed to be doing. But when we are tearing each other down, we are doing more harm than good. If I get a judgment from a man, it doesn't hit me as much as it does from another female, because I'm like, you are supposed to be on my side. So let's talk about this whole self-care is selfish thing. And the only way to create sustainability and to make an impact is to consider our needs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's fascinating that it's 2020, that, there's a lot of talk in society and in the Western world anyhow about, women being able to rise up and take charge of their own life. Yet on a daily basis, the type of judgments I receive feel a lot like it's 1955. And I'm in an episode of Leave It to Beaver, and I'm telling everybody that I need to go spend part of my day working on this and leaving my child, with a grandparent or a babysitter or whatever I need to do in order to facilitate what drives me in life, and that somehow I'm doing something wrong.
And you have to make gluten-free cookies now, not just regular cookies.
Yeah. I mean, I have to make gluten-free cookies. I'm celiac. Thanks, body. Which I think is just really a physical manifestation of all of the bad energy I've put on my own body and all of the lack of self-care that I've given myself for, 30 something years, and eating whatever I want in order to just get through the day emotionally.
But we can't blame ourselves for everything. It also has to do with the shit quality of food that is not real.
Yeah, it's
that we're putting into our bodies. But that's a whole nother rant.
Whole nother conversation. Yeah. And yeah, it's like, I think the number one thing I've learned, in your mastery program is self-care. Now that sounds like a very, very, very simple thing to learn. And it was so paramountly difficult for me. I couldn't believe how much resistance was wrapped around, and guilt, really, resistance through guilt was wrapped around me being able to say, okay, no, I'm going to take 20 minutes and go take that nice calming shower so that I'm in a good mental space for the next part of my day.
And that makes such an impact on everyone.
Yeah. Something as simple as taking a shower or doing a 20-minute breathing exercise or something to ensure that I was functioning in a place that I felt joy at.
So, how does taking care of yourself make you a better pet owner? And let's talk about energy.
Yeah. I think our pets absorb a lot of the energy in our home. I do consultations for people with pets with chronic health conditions to help them work through in a holistic way what they should be eating, or what their pet should be eating, and any sort of, natural supplements that could be given. And one of the first things I ask them is, what is the stress level in your home? Because I need to know, are the people in the home at a significant anxiety and stress level 9 out of 10 times, or 6 out of 7 days a week? Because our pets are really going to feed off of that. So we're gone for the day from 9 to 5, and we get home and we've carried the weight of the world on our shoulders that day, and we bring it home, and we bring it home to our families and our significant others. Our pets are feeling that as soon as we walk into the door. I mean, there's a reason Cesar Millan got as popular as he got. He works with energy when it comes to pets, and he provokes a certain energy that allows him to command a room. I'm not a huge proponent of his training techniques, but what I will say is, if we're not in a good headspace to lead the lives we want to lead and be the people we want to be, everything in our lives will be affected by that, including our pets.
And anytime I've had a trainer teach me something, it's always like training the owner, not the pet.
100%. I do have a lot of people say to me, do you know anywhere I can just send my pet off for a few months and,
Mm.
get them trained up and then they'll just come home to me. They'll be perfect. I'll say to them, these places literally do exist, but I can bet you bottom dollar that you're going to get your pet home and everything's going to go back to square one. Because if you don't understand how to communicate and treat and interact with your pet, then it is a moot point. It's like sending your kid off to boarding school. It is not going to fix your relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
It'll teach them certain skill set, but it doesn't really make that much of an impact.
Yeah. And you have to realize that everything is about relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. The relationship we have with ourselves, the relationship we have with other people.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
I think there's a reason why so many of us women gravitate towards having a pet in the home. And I know that's not everybody, don't get me wrong here, but I think the reason that it is because we do innately feel that they absorb our energy and we are looking for something to mirror that, to make us feel better or to put our energies on them so that we can feel a little bit better. We're looking for that therapy.
Mm.
And now I'm in a position with my relationship with my two dogs where it's the opposite. Now, all of a sudden, from going from them, being a comfort to me in my, anxious or dark moments, it's quite the opposite. If I'm going in for a meditation at home or whatever the case might be, they'll gravitate towards me and very calmly just lay near me and be present. They'll pick up on that energy and they want to be around it. Or if they're nervous or fearful or something, I notice that they come to me now. It used to be my husband, which was always alpha in the household, but now for comfort, they're coming to me. So it's changed the dynamic of my relationship with them completely.
That's interesting. Where how animals, where the intention for the animal has shifted. The relationship has shifted.
Completely.
Interesting. You talked about people pleasing.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I know a lot of women that relate to that. So we want to feel like we're part of a community, part of a tribe. We want to feel accepted and we want to feel secure in our decisions. And so we just assume that the way to get to that is to please everyone around us.
Mm.
And, it used to be that if I had somebody close to me walk into a room, and this still happens occasionally, but I deal with it differently. Having a really tough day or feeling really, really bad, I would literally take every ounce of energy inside of me to try and fix them, knowing that I probably wasn't being as effective as I want to be, but feeling like that was the only way for me not to feel guilty about the fact that they're not feeling well, as if their well-being is somehow my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Why do you think we do that? Is it nature? Like, do you notice female dogs do that more than male dogs, where we are just bred to chronically nurture everyone around us at the sacrifice of our own health?
I think that's probably true to a degree. I think there's some biology there for sure, but I also think it's what we were taught to do.
Mm.
Like I grew up with a stay-at-home dad essentially. My
Mm-hmm.
mom was a chronic workaholic, well, still is, quite frankly,
Mm-hmm.
and not somebody that would be typically described as a nurturer, as a
Mm-hmm.
soft, warm, motherly type of energy. And I find even to this day, I will gravitate to women who have that energy because I didn't have it growing up. My father, on the other hand, very much had a maternal, nurturing energy, and did a lot of the childcare in my home growing up and taught me that you should always sacrifice all of your deepest goals and desires and dreams to care for your family.
Mm.
And, he's in a life stage right now where I know for a fact if he could go back, he would have done things a little differently. And that's been a big motivator for me. So I think as a rule, there must be something biological and innate in that. But I think it's really interesting when it shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And
So what I'm hearing you say is you think people can be, because it always seems like there's the nurturer, right? And then there's the hunter. Like there's the one that does that. And for
but it's
whatever,
a choice.
go ahead.
I think it's a choice that we make.
We can be both.
Yes, that's it. That's it. I think that you hit it on the head. We can do both, that we can be both. And just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that my only role is to nurture the people around me.
Mm. And I've heard women say too, that if I was just the nurturer, right? Like stay at home caregiver, I would go loopy. Like there is a part of me that wants to work, or people who are like, I just want to work and I have no desire in nurturing. I had these children because my husband or my partner wanted these children.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong here. But again, it's the reason why people pigeonhole themselves in certain roles is because of social judgment.
100%. I mean, I remember when I had my first daughter, you know, I told you it was a very different picture how people were judging me and how I was judging myself as well. I thought that I was going to go on maternity leave and I was going to be so enthralled by the fact that I was a new mom that I would never ever want to work another day in my life. What I realized very quickly was that that's not at all the case, because nobody can prepare you for how consuming early motherhood is.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can prepare you for how you are literally being dependent on 24/7 to keep somebody alive.
Yeah.
and and that it's very easy to lose yourself. And so what I thought was going to happen, it was the exact, and what actually happened was the exact opposite. You know, I was so happy and grateful that I had a business to focus some of my energy and time on so that I could feel like I was still partly myself and not just in the mom role.
Mm.
And I'm very, very grateful for that. And it's a lesson I'm taking with me with child number 2 here, is that rather than putting an expectation on myself of how I think things will go or how I want things to go, I'm just going to continue to take care of myself and not let the judgments of others affect me, to know that I need to do what I need to do in order to remain in a balanced state.
I'm curious if you have like a practical strategy, and it can be one that I've taught you, but on how to not, we can make some like statements like, oh, don't allow the judgments of others to affect you. But sometimes we let them, right? Like it's a subconscious thing. It's reprogramming.
Yeah. Yes.
And it could be both ways, right? You can go into mat leave and go, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. I don't want to work anymore. There was something you said about judgment, and I was like, I wonder what happened. And I remember I had this moment where I was like, oh, I'm getting judged either way.
Yeah.
So why don't I just do what brings me joy and let them freaking judge me? And then that way, at least there is some form of like, positive energy coming towards my way because I'm in alignment.
Yeah.
People will
100%.
always judge. But curious if you have feedback on that.
I do. I mean, I will say with respect to judgment, the number one thing I get judged upon right now is I get the question of how much time are you taking off? Well, first of all, where I live in the world, I'm not entitled to any sort of government maternity leave because I'm self-employed. So I can choose to take whatever time I have off with no compensation for that. And the reality is that's a huge factor with how people decide family planning. So my response when I get asked that question is, I don't know, probably a couple weeks. And the look and the sheer terror and horror on people's faces when I say something like that. What they don't realize is that means you may not physically see me, but I'm still going to be doing work when I choose to do it. So some of the tools that I've learned through your program for sure, and also what I employ right now, number one is breathing. I cannot believe how much I've taken breathing for granted. Breathing can completely change the way my nervous system functions and how much anxiety I feel because of that, and can put me in a mental place where I'm capable of making level-headed decisions. So breathing is really important for me. I won't start my day and I won't make any critical decisions until I've had some time alone to make sure that I'm focusing on my breathing. Some people call that meditation. I think that's a really, really big word. And there's 1,001 different ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, for example, when I meditate, I'm not trying to turn my brain off because I don't think it's possible to turn your brain off. What I'm trying to do is set intention and make sure that I'm in a place where I can work through any negative feelings or bad feelings that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really critical for me. And then the second is how I manage my time. I remember I have a family member that decided to have 4 children in 5 years. And I remember I used to impose a lot of judgment on her. How can you do that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. Where do you find time? This is the life choices that this person has made, and that works for them. But I couldn't comprehend or fathom how that would be at all possible. Now I know that it's all about how you manage your energy and your time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's really important to very intentionally decide how I want to spend my week and hold those boundaries and not allow others to shake them. So if I have some time set aside to work on my business, then I've created whatever I need in my life in order to do that, whether that means a babysitter or turning my phone off or whatever the case might be, in order to facilitate what I need to do to get to that goal. Or if I'm spending time with my daughter at the end of her day, that I'm not also working on my business or on my phone, that I'm being with her and spending that quality time with her. And so managing how I spend my week and managing the fact that I can breathe and I'm in a place where I feel like I have the energy to do those things is how I get through it all.
I love it. Do you find, I mean, judgment is I just believe it's part of being human. And I think as we grow, when you get to a state of radical responsibility, as I like to call it, which I did not invent that term, we realize that every judgment, like even in the waking moments, right? If I'm catching myself judging someone, I can completely reflect that on myself, like immediately. It could be judging my husband, my kids, the random stranger walking down the street. I'm like, that's a me issue. Like that's all totally on me, which means I don't gossip as much, if ever. And if I do, it's usually with a friend that's like, what's that about? And I'm like, it's all me. Like, it's all us all the time. So this constant projection coming from ourselves, manifesting this out into the universe. And then of course the universe is like, oh, you want a horrible day? I will give you more evidence of that. Right?
Yeah.
Like you want the weather to get shittier? I'll give you more evidence of that, rather than trying to find that silver lining. But sometimes it's hard to get out of that cycle. Sometimes it's like a shit show to go, how do I change the way that I think? And this is what I love about the conversation. There's no right or wrong here.
It's just recognizing it.
Exactly. And it's the whole person, right? It's not just our thoughts or our dog's behavior. It's everything. It's our food, it's our thinking, it's everything. So Alina, what do you say to those people that just can't get it? They're like, I've tried every supplement, because you're in the dog world, right? We do the same thing. Mine is with women and children, and women and themselves, and their families, because they want to leave a legacy of becoming that person they want their children to be. And yours is with women and men, but like you said, mostly women and their pets. So for that person that's like, I have no idea where to start, what do you say to them?
I say to them, be open-minded and allow yourself to be curious. And if you have to trust your instincts and your gut, and what guides me is fear and trepidation. That's where I know I need to run towards. So if, you're terrified of walking into that naturopath's office or that holistic pet food place or whatever it might be, because you're afraid of the unknown or the changes, know that if you feel that way, then it's probably something you really need in your life.
I love it. Where can people find you, Miss Alina?
They can find me on Instagram. Alina the Hungry Pooch is my handle. They can look up the Hungry Pooch, which is my raw food pet store, and find us on Instagram as well through that handle. And yeah, I am so open to having conversations with any women out there who might be resonating with what I have to say. And just knowing that there's no normal, and that there's a million and one ways to lead your life, and that you shouldn't be afraid to do it, because really just the fact that the sun rose today is amazing. We should all be grateful for it, because if it didn't, all life on this planet would cease in 48 hours. So when you put your life into that kind of perspective, you realize there is nothing I need to be afraid of.
Yeah. And I'm not going to be concerned that it's February and there's no snow.
No. No.
Oh, God.
Oh,
this is why, ladies, we need to awaken and become our best selves. The world needs us.
It really does.
It has been led by men, and we can see where it has gotten us. So, ladies, take care of yourself. The world needs you. The world needs you. So, Alina, this is what I love about you. I'm just going to take a moment to tell you how much I love you. I often wonder, I always say this to myself or think it, and I've said this on the podcast. Why? Why does somebody say yes to this path that can be uncomfortable, but yet so rewarding and so free? And regardless of how many times you get knocked down, you get up again. And I'm not trying to sing a song, but I just, I just love you and appreciate you so much, because rewiring our brain, our belief system, and not everyone is willing to change those generational patterns in our history as women, but also in parenting. And you are a perfect example of a woman on a mission to make sure that her girls grow up knowing their worth, knowing how to feel confident and amazing in their own mind and their own body. And you're doing the work so that they don't have to do it. So I see you and I appreciate you. And I'm just so, so grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. And boy, am I glad I signed up and went through this whole process. It's been amazing. There's a little Heather that sits on my shoulders every day.
Aww.
And her voice is my own, but it looks like you. And it makes me smile. So thank you.
I was going to say, is it the little devil and angel?
No, it's this tiny little blonde thing that sits on my shoulder and reminds me when I need to breathe and when I need to do everything I need to do.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you.